Hello and welcome to the Rabblecast. My name is Erik Hernandez, and somebody's hiding in the background there, right? You?
Yes.
I somehow convinced Doug to stick around for the intro, which is not something that happens often these days. You are listening
It's
to
not hard that
episode.
hard to convince me.
Well, that's true. You pretty much just said, yeah, sure. You are listening to episode number 613, if I remember correctly. On this episode, we talk about the writer's strike, the actor's strike, movies. I'm trying to remember what else. Chime in if there's something I can't think of off the top of my head. This is part of the problem. After doing the show, I can't exactly recall what we listened to, and then I have to do the playback. Then I'll catch things here and there. But I'm sure these are all things you'll enjoy, you'll listen to, you'll have fun with, and we'll go from there. We are brought to you by InsidePulse.com. You can find us under the podcast section. You can also find the show over at Rabblecast.libsyn.com, where the show is always posted. Check us out on YouTube. Check out the Facebook fan page. Send us a tweet at Rabblecast and email us, rabblecast@gmail.com. Anything else there?
No, I think you got that.
Sweet. All right, well, I thank you for joining me for the intro.
Cool. I did very little.
uh, Thank you, and enjoy the show. I did it again. As soon as I hit the button to start, I'm like, oh, let's get some background noise so we can use it for editing later. I'm like, I don't want to breathe. It's a weird moment I have to deal with. Let's see if I can. There we go. Just try to. Never mind the clattering you hear in the background. That's just me trying to figure shit out. Okay.
That's quite all right. Do what you got to do.
Oh boy. How have you been, sir?
It's been a rough road. Been a rough road lately.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
Is that work or personal related?
Well, a little of both.
Gotcha. I'm doing okay so far. I've had a busy week so far since we last spoke. A lot of stuff's going on. My oldest has just been signed up for and is head over heels for his new martial arts classes, which is always a great
Cool.
thing. One of our mutual friends is heading up the class, so it's nice to be able to hang out with her and see her instruct our oldest, and he's taken to it very well so far. He only had one moment where he got a little overwhelmed because they asked him to do something and he had no clue what to do. But the instructor worked with him. He overcame the little hurdle very quickly, and he got right back to it, and he's having fun. He's 3 classes in, so they already gave him his white belt to start him on his journey, and it's quite interesting.
Oh, okay. Who is he? Do you want to say the name of the person he's training with on the show?
Absolutely, yeah. Our friend Amber.
Ah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, we always ran into her every now and then, or we spoke to her, and she was always mentioning that, she moved up the ranks, so to speak, in the school, and she got herself into the position of, I guess, head trainer, or I don't know if she runs the school specifically, but I never really got into the finer details. But she always says, oh, if your son's looking for something to do, you can always sign him up for classes. And it was something that I always wanted to do. I mean, I grew up in the 80s, so all the martial arts and ninja movies, you try to your best to recreate fight scenes, and you think you're flying through the air doing the ninja kick, and like it looks nothing like that in reality.
No. Hell no.
When you're sitting there flinging around the nunchucks that you bought from the flea market, you're like, yeah, I'm like Bruce Lee. No, you're not. So I myself, always being in love with those that genre of movies, for better or worse, depending on which ones you watch. Jen was always the same way. She was always a big fan of martial arts, and we never had the opportunity as kids to get enrolled to a class, and I always made it a point to tell Jen, I was like, look, I'm fine enrolling him in classes, but let's not project what we wanted as kids onto him. Like, that's not say, oh, you have to do this. No, if he wants to, he'll do it. And if he likes it, then cool, then continue. But at the same time, I was like, if he falls out of love with it for whatever reason, we can't push him to go back. I mean, we can motivate him. We can then, encourage him and say, hey, look, if you could just tough it out or whatever. But my point is always, if he's not going to take to it, then there's no point in trying to push him towards it if he falls out of love with it. Maybe he'll find it again later on, but whatever he's into, let's try to encourage that and keep him going. Like right now, we're very fortunate. He's about to start second grade, and his reading has taken on, a life of its own. He can't read enough. You'll find different books. Now there's an app that we got for him for the year that allows him to read stuff over whatever is available to this library. We didn't get it for him. We always were eyeing it up, and our friend Tiny was nice enough for his birthday to pick it up for him. So he's got a year's worth of subscription to read unlimited amounts of kids' books, and he's just putting them away left and right. He even has a little bookshelf collection at this point that he maintains and curates. It's kind of cute.
Nice.
So, yeah, we just always want to make sure that whatever we're supporting him in, it's something that he actually wants to do. Like, I'm not going to say, hey, learn how to do art because I want you to do art. And he's going to say, I don't like art. Art's stupid. I don't want that to be a point of contention. If he's into it, cool. Let's support it as much as we can. If he falls out of love with it, well, let's hopefully the next thing he gets into, hopefully we can support him with as well. And that's been not just for him, but also for his younger brother. And once he starts getting into different things, because Amber is like, I take, kids as young as babies and we'll start them off. So it's nice. The facility's nice. We've had the in-laws come over to check it out. They're very happy with it. They got to see the white belt being given to him or awarded to him. And so far it's giving him the courage and the motivation to listen, learn, and have fun. And right now I couldn't be happier because he's starting to do like little side kicks and punches. So I'm showing him little things as far as like body mechanics, but I'm just letting him put it together at this point. So I'm not trying to say you have to do it this way. No, it's just like, all right, just keep in mind, we want it to go like this, and just throw the punch and swivel your hips or turn your torso. Just trying to give him the idea of how it's supposed to work, and then let him apply it when it goes to class. And then from there, he can be instructed to correct it, change it, whatever is necessary, and then go from there. But little by little.
All right.
So, let's see. Let's get this going, because like I said, it's already going to be a hot one, and I don't want to sit for 2 hours in a hot room. Last week, we spoke about the Writers Guild of America and the Screen Actors Guild. Sorry, the acronyms escaped me for a second. And their ongoing strike right now, at least the Writers Guild is ongoing strike for about 2 months now. And we had briefly talked about last week how the Screen Actors Guild was going to strike. Their deadline apparently was June 30th. But as things played out, they extended their deadline to try to exhaust every opportunity for negotiations until the 12th of July. So that should be Wednesday.
Yes.
At this point, I mean, they pretty much said that they're going for the same thing that the Writers Guild are going for. They want residuals on streaming pay, and they also want to avoid the use of AI without being paid. So if you're going to get Tom Cruise de-aged for Mission Impossible 30-something, I don't know, down the line, because apparently Tom Cruise wants to keep doing Mission Impossible movies until he's Harrison Ford's current age, so into like 70s or 80s, whatever the case is. They want to be able to say, hey, look, if you're going to use a CG representation of me, then you have to pay me. Sounds fair, right?
Yeah.
And then the other thing that came up that they said they're trying to avoid is restricting the use for AI training. In other words, taking all the different sets and scenes and dialogue and just feeding it into an AI algorithm and training it how to do things. Like right now, I know I've mentioned before that James Earl Jones has signed away his voice to Disney. So if you ever want to have Darth Vader's voice come out of a Disney movie, they could easily do it now because they have a computer program that's probably being fed and trained on a bunch of old James Earl Jones dialogue and lines.
That's creepy.
It is. We could have like 40, 50 years down the line, James Earl Jones no longer with us possibly. And then out of nowhere, we have a new Darth Vader scene. And he gives like this long diatribe. You're like, where do they have the time to write this and have them record it? No, it's AI. It's all computer generated now.
Oh, yeah.
So it's
not a fan of any of this. Yeah.
It's fair. It's new territory. It's new frontiers that we really didn't think about up until recently. Like, I know everybody makes the joke of, Skynet is online from Terminator 2 and the world is coming to an end. That's always been the joke. But
if it's not Skynet, then it's going to be Ultron. Take your pick.
Yeah, this has been thought up in different mediums in different areas already. But the funny thing is, I read an article where even Arnold Schwarzenegger is like, oh no, we're there already. Like, with the use of AI, now people are training it, we're there. It's no longer a movie. It's no longer sci-fi. And I don't know, I wouldn't take Arnold's word, anything serious when it comes to AI and algorithms. But for the general purposes, I mean, we're there. We can recreate certain things, and with the use of computer programs and aids, we can now have a Carrie Fisher that's been de-aged, a Mark Hamill that's been de-aged, James Earl Jones who can be recreated, Peter Cushing. From the one Star Wars movie, Rogue One, I know I mentioned it before. All these things can be recreated, enhanced, changed, new scenes. It's creepy. And it's also creepier when you think about that Disney and Marvel movies are the ones that are like using this technology the most so far.
Yeah, well, I mean, it makes sense because if they want to do anything with those properties, those key characters, your Han Solos and your Han Solo, I should say, and your Princess Leia and your Luke Skywalker, that asshole. These people are either dead or old as fuck at this point. So if there's still money to be mined out of them, so they're going to figure out how to do them. So,
and look at it this way. Also, you have the most recent Indiana Jones movie, The Dial of Destiny, where they do a scene where they like the early parts you de-age Indiana Jones. But the one comment I've been hearing, I have not seen the film just yet, so I'm going off of what I've read online and people have talked about as far as reviews, is that, yeah, you can de-age Harrison Ford all you want, but when he speaks, it's still an old man speaking out of a younger representation of himself. I was like, okay, there is a certain mix that you have to get just right, because otherwise it might not sound right. I know Mark Hamill does a pretty good job at still speaking like he did when he was younger. I mean, granted, he's an older gentleman now, and I'm sure all the years of smoking probably didn't do him any help. But yeah, at this point, for them to be using the technology so frequently, trying to remember some of the other ones. Ms. Marvel, when they de-aged Samuel L. Jackson and the guy who played Phil Coulson, because you had to put him in the 90s. For their younger looks, so you had to like de-wrinkle them. That's the best way I can put it, I guess. But they can still pull off their voices because they still sound similar to what they did back then. And then when they also did it in, was it Infinity War? No, it was Civil War. When they de-aged Robert Downey Jr. for that little trip down memory lane with his parents.
Oh, yeah. Well, that was also a simulation, too, so it was supposed to look a little bit fake, as far as I could tell.
Yeah, I mean, you can justify it any which way the storyline calls for, but it's like they're using this technology a lot, and they've done it more and more and more, and it's only going to be a matter of time before they have to try to pull something else out, and they have to try to make it, I don't know, make the use of the technology probably the length of the entire film. Because, I mean, Samuel L. Jackson was essentially de-aged the entire length of Ms. Marvel, but he wasn't the main character. So you didn't see him as often. But they'll play with it more and more. And that's where people are getting afraid, saying that, oh, you're going to start using AI, then you're going to have representations of us, and it's not going to be actually us. And at that point, if we sold the rights to Disney or Marvel, then you can just recreate these characters all the live long day and maybe like slightly age them as the story progresses. But at that point, you really don't need the actual actor, unless it's just like recording dialogue or lines, which, depending on who you ask, at that point, it might be beneficial to some of these actors who maybe don't want to do the crazy stunts or the crazy trips to some of the sceneries, or the what do they refer to it as, when they go scouting for different locations and they're overseas and they have to do everything else. Maybe they don't want to take an overseas trip. Maybe they don't want to go to a tropical location. They can just be on a soundstage and just record lines. Who knows? It might be the way to go, but right now we're still in the infancy of a lot of this right now, and I'm curious of what's going to happen, because with the Writers Guild still holding out, apparently just about every production in Hollywood has been shut down at this point. Anything that was still in the works as far as development that wasn't affected by the strike has all pretty much just dried up. So the Writers Guild is using this to leverage their point, saying, look, you can't make any new shows unless we make a deal. A lot of the low budget and independent projects are still moving forward because they don't want to shut down every little thing. I think it's like under $3 million is the cutoff budget wise for small projects. And of course, if you're independent of the studios, then that's a different story entirely.
Mm-hmm.
But now with the Screen Actors Guild saying, hey, look, we're trying in good faith to negotiate. If we don't get this going, then nothing's going to move forward. And then again, we've mentioned before, the return of reality television is a very real possibility. I don't know if there's any particular shows that you liked back in 07, 08 that came out that caught your fancy as far as reality TV. I know, like back in the day, what was it? MTV's, what was it? Real World, Road Rules, and I can't remember some of the other ones, but all the different little game shows or reality shows that came out that try to fill the gaps as far as slots on TV and viewing in prime time, especially. But it's a different animal nowadays, especially. So I don't know how that one's going to play out as far as making new shows.
I have no idea at this fucking point. All I know is they're delaying like a few things I actually want to fucking watch, which is irritating as shit. But also on the same account, this is what greed gets you, as I've said before.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to. They were mentioning that they're going to use a third-party company to evaluate the top performers of different streaming shows, and that way that they would adjust the residuals based on which shows are performing at the top. Like right now, if I were to log on to Netflix, they have their top 10 that they put out, whatever metrics they use to define top 10, it's out there. But at the same time, let's see, which one do we have? The new Avatar, Way of Water. It currently is streaming on not only Disney Plus, but also on HBO's Max app. And by combining the hours that have been viewed, they can say whether it's considered one of the top releases recently. I don't know how that works. Back in the day, it was just ratings, like how many people watched it, how many views you got. Even then, the Nielsen ratings, I don't know. It's. I know they've shifted as well from just straight TV ratings to more streaming ratings now. But even that seems kind of weird. At one point, I remember we actually got a letter in the mail that they wanted us to be one of the Nielsen homes.
Oh, really?
And I was actually all for it, but I'm like, nah, this sounds kind of stupid. They're going to pay you like what, $5-10 maybe, and just to be part of the viewing group, I guess you can say. And at that point, they would just whatever you watched through your cable box would then be recorded, or at least the ratings would be recorded, and they would accumulate all that information, put that into whatever big formula they have to say, okay, these are the ones that are the top rated ones for this past month, for this past week, and this demographic, and then they come up with some final number. Now I'm not entirely sure. Do they just hit up to the internet service providers and say, hey, we want to see all the viewing traffic for all your customers? And how does that work? Right? It seems a little bit more far-fetched at this point.
I would really much like to have the streaming services step out of the shadows and actually just tell us what the hell, like what their freaking metrics are anyway.
But that's just it. I think that's part of what gives them their mystique and allure right now. And once that comes out, I think they're kind of screwed. Because once they
Why do you say
reveal,
that?
once the genie's out of the bottle, they're not going to have as much room to leverage, I don't believe. I think they've been blowing up some of the stuff that they have had in the past. You know, kind of like the fake it till you make it thing. Because early on, you know, I remember when Netflix had their first big production, what was it, Lilyhammer? With one of the guys from The Sopranos.
Okay.
It was like a big thing back in the day. They were talking about, oh, it's, you know, top rated. Everybody loves it. They were just like kind of riding the coattails off of whatever Sopranos momentum they had. And then hopefully the idea that they're creating their first streaming show. I do know that Apple is throwing money left and right at a bunch of different shows, but they've also just started recently canceling things after just one season. Because again, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, move on to the next one. But their metrics, again, not knowing what they are, leaves everything up in the air. We've seen obvious hits like Stranger Things, you and I are both fans of.
Yeah.
But we, aside from like viewing hours, we don't know exactly what that means. Is that just reruns of people watching it over and over again? Is that straight viewings for the first time? How do they really catch this? Because I remember there was a show that came out from I'm trying to remember the name of the company. I believe it was the Nacelle Group. They did the Toys That Made Us and the Movies That Made Us.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the guy who's behind it, Brian Volk-Weiss, because he always says, you know, if you guys love the show, if you guys are a fan of it, do us a favor, you know, watch as many times as you can, just so we can pump up the numbers. But at the same time, he says, hey, you know, if you're about to leave the house or something, just if you happen to leave it on, just let it loop, and the you know, it plays 2-3 episodes in a row. That doesn't hurt anything, you know, because again, who knows if you're actually sitting there and watching it. It's just the counter going off over and over again as it completes an episode. And nowadays you've got the auto replay or the autoplay for the next episode. So the next one loads up and it goes into it again. So, I mean, you could do that easily and help out your favorite show or movie. I know I've done it a few times where late night I'll put it on in the background. I'll pass out and the show's still playing. Even if the TV's off, it just keeps going. I'll turn on the TV in the morning. It says, are you still watching? No, of course not. I'm passed out. But that's another way you could go about it to help them out in a sense. I've been, again, if anybody who hasn't watched The Toys That Made Us and The Movies That Made Us, they have a bunch of different episodes on a bunch of different IPs and movies. Just fun stuff to get behind the scenes. I know the ones more recent they did were, there's one for RoboCop, there's one for Aliens. I remember some of the other ones. Nightmare Before Christmas, I believe, had one as well. It's just a fun series to see behind the scenes and how everything came together. Sometimes they'll have interviews with the actors. Sometimes they'll just have interviews with the producers or directors. But it's always fun to get an idea of how something came together, especially since we've talked about before, again, in Hollywood, how hard it is to get anything made in the first place and how many moving parts there are. You get to see a glimpse of how that all works when it all comes together. So, but I don't know. It's, the strike has me interested only in so much that we've always talked about, you know, when I ask you, have you watched this show? And you're like, no, I just don't have time. There's just so much content out there.
Oh yeah, we're drowning in it.
You would think that a lot of these writers and performers, that they'd be set, that there'd be no reason for a strike. Like, oh, there's so much work going on out there. There's so many different projects going on out there. It should be great as far as working in Hollywood. Well, that's not always the case. And as we've been getting to see in some of these negotiations, pay rate increases, the whole thing with AI, everybody just wants their fair shake. But as we've talked about before, where a lot of the studios and producers, they just want to try to hold on to as much money as they can, because obviously they're getting the money as it comes in goes through them first, and then they have to pay out performers and creators and writers, whatever the case is. But they greed, once again, want to hold on to that cash. And I get it. You want to try to get a larger piece of the pie, but to what extent? Are you going to sacrifice your writers, your performers, and just say, hey, look, yeah, you did a great job, but I own the IP or I own the show, so I'm just going to hold on to everything. Things get shittier more and more. It brings to mind, have you had a chance to check out on Netflix? There's a documentary. It's the unofficial documentary of the American Gladiators called Muscles and Mayhem.
I have not seen it.
Okay. If you get a chance, I don't know how unofficial you can get when you've got the majority of the gladiators talking to you in interview segments. I mean, this is like right from their stories, from their mouths, their recollections. Essentially what it comes down to, if anybody's not familiar with the American Gladiators TV show, in '89, they came out with this game show where you have these, bodybuilders. They refer to them as gladiators, both male and female. They go out there and you compete against them. And for the most part, it's like average everyday Joes who go out and audition, get accepted, and then go on to the show and compete in a bunch of different athletic events. Some were fun, some were boring, depending on what the case was. But to be sure, the American Gladiators was a hit show that it ran for like 6 or 7 seasons. This unofficial documentary tells the tale of how they went about creating the show, how they went about auditioning the gladiators, and then you find out that the gladiators themselves were never really properly taken care of. They told them at one point, like, once we get out of the red, everybody will start making more money, and everybody will benefit from the show being a hit. Like 2 or 3 seasons in, the show became a hit, but the gladiators weren't getting paid any money. They weren't getting any insurance. If you got hurt during filming, that was pretty much you're out. It was on you to recuperate and hopefully come back. If not, they had to release you from your contract. When they did try to talk about saying, hey, look, we see the merchandising, we see the rights, we see the tour, we see the ratings. Can we get more money? And what happens when a few workers decide to stand up against the front office? Usually,
is that a rhetorical question?
Well, it just, in general, yeah, because it was, how do I put this? It would be different if all the gladiators were able to stand up and say, hey, we all want more money. But only like 3 or 4 of them were able to like band together. And at that point, the front office is like, if you don't want to show up to work on Monday, then consider yourself fired. You're like, fuck. But again, it's a glimpse behind the scene, especially of a show where a bunch of guys and girls were just trying to, get on TV, get famous. They make it a point where they say that, between seasons 2 and 3, you can see a marked difference in the size of some of the gladiators, because they were using steroids or whatever they had available to themselves. One of the gladiators even went as far as going over the border for Mexico to get some steroids, because at the time it was, it was easy to score down there, as a lot of professional wrestlers and athletes would attest to at the time. He goes down there, when he's coming back up, he gets caught at the border. And all of a sudden, he hears a bunch of commotion. All of a sudden, the drug dogs coming his way. He is then forced to get onto the ground. He has a gun to the back of his head. And he goes, how far am I willing to go for this show? I mean, apparently, I'm willing to go as far as having a gun pointed at my head. This is ridiculous. And at that point, he started taking stock of his life and his choice. He goes, what the fuck am I doing?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So it's a fun documentary, because again, you get to relive a lot of the heyday of the gladiators. You get to see what they're up to. The fun part is seeing what they look like then, and then seeing what they look like now, especially when they do interviews with them. Nitro, Laser, Ice, Zap, Tower, Storm, some of the other ones. They just get like a whole bunch of them. They got just about every gladiator, and just had a little sit down with them. And you get to find out the ins and outs of how it all went down. And you're like, oh, wow, this, it was just a crazy time. And somehow this show took off, thanks to this one guy who apparently was an Elvis impersonator. So, I don't know. You'll get a better retelling of the story if you watch the documentary, or excuse me, the unofficial documentary. So if you have time, even for yourself, Doug, I highly recommend it, because we watched the first I watched them late night while I was doing house chores, and then Dan came over one night and we watched like the first two episodes, and he was enthralled with it, and just to see the evolution of the show as it went along.
No, I've heard it's pretty good. I just haven't had any motivation or interest in watching new shit lately.
Are you like in a? Because I know you said you're just like trying to catch up on a bunch of different things or just watch things that interest you. Are you just like in a comfort zone with watching stuff, or?
I'm just tired and easily overloaded with stuff, so it's like, nah, I'm just gonna watch something I've seen 50 times because it's easy to digest instead of whatchamacallit, instead of something new that is actually going to require some mental energy.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, for me, especially since firing this all back up, I've had I'm always willing to watch something new, whether it be a TV show or movie. If it's a series, I might hold off a little bit and build a few episodes up before I watch it. Otherwise, I'll catch it on the back end. But especially with the show, I'm just trying to take in more stuff just so I can have a better opinion of different things that are coming out. Like Indiana Jones, excuse me. I have not been able to watch the new movie that came out in the theaters, even though I heard it's apparently not doing so well. Another unfortunate victim of the current box office. But I did recently rewatch Raiders of the Lost Ark and started watching Temple of Doom, all of which are on Disney Plus currently, so it makes it easier just to turn on the TV and turn on the application and just go from there. So much so that I found out in the beginning of Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom,
yeah,
the one scene after they get away from the bad guy and he walks away with the antidote and oh gosh, what was her name? The singer and Short Round when they leave the bar. Do you
Willie Kate Capshaw.
Thank you. Yes. Willie and Short Round, once they join India and they're about to load onto the plane and get away from Lao Che, the bad guy in that scene, the one guy who, when Indy and the gang arrive at the airport, the one guy who helps them get onto the plane, you don't see him up close, but as I'm doing stuff in the background, all of a sudden I hear a voice come over my TV. I'm like, wait, is that who I think it is? And I quickly look it up real fast. Sure enough, it's a small cameo by Dan Aykroyd.
Really?
Had no clue who was in the movie. Like, as a child, I had no clue he was part of it, but obviously now as an adult, I'm more, I can recognize the voice more easily. Jump back real fast, try to rewind. You barely see his face because they don't even do like so much of as a close-up on him, but you just hear him talk to Indiana Jones and the group and talking about, they made accommodations for the plane, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, holy shit, that's Dan Aykroyd. And come to find out he had a working relationship with Steven Spielberg, so he was able to do a cameo, this and that. It was all like in that 80s framework where everybody was just like pretty much cross-pollinating. So I was like, oh wow, I didn't fucking know that. There's a little trivia for you. And then apparently in that same scene, I think it was Lucas, Spielberg, and like a couple other people behind the scenes were also in cameos as background characters. So I was like,
oh wow. Yeah.
Did not know that. But, again, trying to get ready for the newer stuff, try to go back and watch some of the older stuff and appreciate it for what it was. Speaking of which, the top performers at the box office so far this year, if I remember reading it correctly, it looks to be so far Avatar 2, Way of Water, and the Super Mario Brothers movie, which is kind of weird. Huh. Everything else has kind of fallen by the wayside. I mean, granted, you've had other performers like Guardians 3 that done really well, but just about every other movie that's come out this year has had like subpar numbers where they'll put out the initial projections for a lot of the different things, and then they'll say, oh, we have to change it up because I think Indiana Jones only made like 24 million on its first day, and I think barely broke 80 million so far even after 4th of July. So,
which is funny because it made killer money, and it's only been out for a week and a half, I think.
Yeah.
That they're already saying, well, it's underperformer and it's a dog. I mean, yeah, what the fuck?
Well, part of that is also coming off the fact that they're saying it's probably one of the more expensive movies that Disney and I guess no, Lucasfilm got bought up by Disney, but so from Disney itself. It was a budget of $295 million for that movie. I don't know what that went into, because from early reports from the film itself, it seems like a lot of the stuff that they did was not necessarily on location. They probably did a lot of stuff on sets, or using what they refer to as the volume, which is the big green screen thing in the back, or the big video wall. Maybe a lot of the money went into de-aging Harrison Ford early on for the set piece that they had there. I don't know. It's unfortunate, but yeah, just about a week all the way through, and they're like, "Oh, it's not going to make it. Sorry, it's a bomb. It's a flop already." They're so quick to judge, and the projections are just like adjusted so fast at this point that it's just not doing so well. To give you an indication, The Flash, that just came out recently, apparently it's out of theaters already. It only survived 2 to 3 weeks, and they just pulled the plug on it. And all right, it's done. So you expect to see that one probably by, I would say maybe August, September. You'll probably see that on video on demand, so you can either rent or buy, because they're going to want to try to.
I think it'll be even shorter.
You think so?
I can tell you. Here's a good indicator. Do you remember the movie Renfield that came out back in April or so?
Yes, with Nick Cage.
Yeah, that's been on Peacock to stream for, I think, already 2 or 3 weeks.
Has it?
Yeah. Yeah, because I keep meaning to watch it, and I never seem to get around to it.
It's crazy. I remember growing up as a kid, you would have to wait almost a half a year to a year for a movie to come out in video.
Oh yeah, it was nuts. I remember. I'll never forget, because I remember working at a video store in 2000, and it took almost a year for episode 1, The Phantom Menace, to come out on video.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just when is this ever fucking coming out? And they finally said, well, it opened May 1999. We'll put it out April of 2000. It's the fuck are you waiting for? But it was a different time, and and the model was different, 23, 24 years ago now. So
yeah, that also, again, you go back to the whole pandemic thing where they were doing day and date releases, and whether that helped or hurt the industry as far as movie fans are concerned, because they keep saying that by being told to be at home during the pandemic, did that train us and break us of the habit of going out to movie theaters. And
yeah, and it also reminded us that sometimes going to the movie theaters fucking sucks.
I remember going to watch The Batman with Robert Pattinson. And I was like, all right, I'm going to go to the movies because I'm a big fan still, and going to try to appreciate it for what it's worth, and especially anything comic book related. You already got my attention. Went to the movies. It was the reclining chairs, everybody is spread out, and they have the little tray tables, whatever the case is. I'm sitting down and watching the movie. The movie is almost 3 hours long to begin with. And the guy,
something like that. I remember it took me 2 sittings to get through the thing.
Yeah, and the guy next to me on my left, starts pulling his phone out and checking his phone. I'm already getting annoyed because I'm like, what the fuck, dude? We're in a movie theater. that's distracting. He bought a few beers I saw. He took off his flip-flops and his feet were dangling out. I'm like, this guy is he's just lounging. He's not watching a movie. He's just come to, he's hanging out in his living room. This is kind of weird. Half hour into the movie, he's passed out.
Yeah.
At first I thought maybe he was just that relaxed that he wasn't moving at all. But then I could audibly hear him snore.
That's
to which I was
fucking wild.
Why would you pay almost $20 to come to a movie theater, pay ridiculous prices for beer, snacks, and a recliner that's maybe halfway comfortable, and just pass out? I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, everybody's got a different, set of circumstances, I guess. Maybe this was his little getaway from whatever home or work life, whatever the case was. But I was like, wow. I'm like, if I'm paying money for a movie, I'd like to stay awake and enjoy the movie rather than just pass out after a beer or two. That's kind of silly.
Exactly. I mean, at that point, it's stay the fuck home and save the money, for God's sakes.
Exactly.
Especially at the rates of a beer at a movie theater. What is that, $8 to $10 for domestic? And I think imports you're getting close to $15.
Yeah.
Yeah, woof.
So it comes to the point now when I do get a chance to go out to the theaters, I'll try to pick, probably not the day of, if I can get the sneak preview, the early day release, or maybe later in the week, I'll try to find a show where there's not many people just because
Hmm.
the less people, the better, as far as I'm concerned. I no longer like really go in for the big movie crowd experience anymore. Like you go watch a Marvel movie, like in the one reveal scene where Captain America picks up Thor's hammer, and the crowd goes nuts. Like
Yeah.
that's a nice moment to be in the theater with the audience to experience that. Nowadays, I'm just like, you know what? I'd prefer to have it like I had maybe like a half empty theater, or just a few people in the theater, whatever the case is. I can just watch a movie, enjoy it. I think I watched like Fast 10. I think I had like 6 other people in the theater with me. It was like a smaller theater, but
And how long was that after opening weekend for
I
that?
think that was like 3 weeks into the release of the film.
Okay.
It was a
I have an
weekday.
interesting test coming up because I'm going to see Oppenheimer about a week after it comes out.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, I'm going with a friend of the show, Patty, as she's a big fan of Cillian Murphy, and I'm a big fan of Robert Oppenheimer. So,
That's a good mix. There you go. That's what I'm definitely
yeah.
looking forward to see. And there's been a debate whether, and I can understand this one, a debate whether the film is going to open overseas in Japan or not. I'm like, ooh, yeah, that might
Yeah,
be
that's a bit of a touchy. That's a little touchy,
a little sore spot. I understand, storytelling and cinematic experiences and everything, but yeah, that's a bit of history that it's probably just not quite been dealt with just yet overseas probably. So we'll have to wait and see. But I'm definitely looking forward to it because once again, Nolan doing it. A lot of the early talk of that film, just if they're as accurate as they say they have been. Now, granted, no movie is 100% accurate, and they'll do a few things here and there to bridge a few gaps. They might like meld characters into one another, and they'll dramatize a few things, but they'll play a little fast and loose here and there with some of the points. So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, there's a couple of things I'm curious of so far in regards to it. I mean, the cast looks stellar. I mean, there's some heavy hitters in there. I mean, Cillian Murphy, Matt Damon, Robert Downey Jr. Those are only the ones who I'm remembering off the top of my head. Only because I know all three historical figures that they're playing. But yeah, there's a couple others I've been on the lookout for. Actually, beforehand, I'm going to go back and rewatch the 1989 Tour de Force, Fat Man and Little Boy, which was also about the Manhattan Project, so I can see how the two of them compare to each other.
Interesting. Okay.
Yes.
When was that one released? I don't remember off the top of my head.
What? Fat
Fat
Man and
Man,
Little
Little
Boy?
Boy. Yeah.
I want to say 1989 or 1988
All right.
because I remember hearing the trailer. I remember seeing it somewhere when I was a kid and thinking, why would a little boy be hanging out with a fat guy? But now, here we are 30 odd years later. I was like, oh, never mind. So I do know, interestingly enough, that hearkening back to stories told in the past on this show, the physicist Lewis Lawton was played by John Cusack, and that he was one of, I believe, 3 people who were killed by the Demon Corps.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that's actually one of the scenes in the movie. That was actually one of the things that first got me interested in the whole situation, because it's a famous scene where, yeah, they were fooling around with a critical mass of a plutonium sphere in a remarkably unsafe way, and yeah, he ended up catching a fatal dose of radiation.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, and there were like 2 or 3 other bodies on that plutonium sphere. Fun fact, that was actually supposed to be the core of the third atomic bomb if Japan had not surrendered.
Oh, okay. Well, hmm. I'm sorry. So, in recent viewings, this is a little bit of a tangent. The show Secret Invasion on Disney Plus. I have it on in the background right now,
Yeah.
and I'm currently reminded that there's this one scene where they show Chernobyl, where the Skrulls of the show have taken up residence essentially because their bodies are not affected by the radiation.
Oh, okay.
But at the same time, I'm trying to think to myself, as they go into these places that are irradiated, so no humans can go there regardless, but they apparently are safe. So they have no worries about somebody coming by and finding them. Um, since they are told, hey, look, we're going to try to find a planet for you guys while you're here on Earth, you just have to agree to stay in human form and stay out of sight when you're out of human form. But just don't cause trouble and work with SHIELD. Help us out. We'll help you out, kind of thing. But the thought that always crosses my mind is, one, what happens to all the clothings and the objects that they wear? Because they're obviously going to be irradiated.
Oh, yeah.
So if they have to leave those areas and those territories, aren't they spreading that radiation around with them? Even if it's like lower levels, but still, like anybody around them is going to get sick. And then at one point you find out that in this show, some people are being taken hostage by the Skrulls, and they're having copies of them put out into the real world. Well, they're being held in these same facilities that are supposedly irradiated. That can't be good for the humans that are being held captive, unless they've somehow decontaminated the areas that they're in. Even still, they're going through a radiation area. So it's like, it's comic book writing at its best. You're like, oh yeah, like let's just try to forget that little fact that radiation can affect humans so easily and so invisibly. Like suddenly your skin's peeling off the back of your hand. You're like, oh my god, what happened? Well, you just came in contact with the radiation. It goes back to that Chernobyl series that was on HBO a couple years back.
Oh yeah.
When the firefighters are going out there and they think they're just putting out a regular fire, but as they get closer and closer, they realize that, oh, yeah, this not just a not just a fire, it's a radioactive fire, and it's just not something we're accustomed to. And they didn't realize, just by getting so close to the vicinity, how it was going to affect them long term. And I mean, let's face it, the majority of those people who went to go rescue anybody in that facility ended up dying of either radiation burns or effects of cancer later on.
Yeah, and the sad part was a lot of them didn't even know what they were dealing with. That was the thing. In fact, yeah, there's that scene in there that's so terrifying when they pull up and they start working on like laying out the hoses and everything. And yeah, one of them says like, "Does anybody else taste metal?" Which is one of the dead giveaway signs that there's like there's a lot of radiation in the area. And then yeah, another guy picks up like a chunk of like this smooth black mineral, which is later revealed to be graphite, which was part of the core. And, a minute later, he's on the ground holding his hand, screaming. And then, yeah, they they pulled a few punches with it. But, yeah, the effects of dying from radiation poisoning are pretty hellish. So it's, at one scene, they even say it's like, yeah, if you can track that much radiation by this time tomorrow, you will be begging for a bullet.
It's so crazy. But with the release of Oppenheimer and what was the other one again? Fat Boy and Little
Fat Man and Little Boy.
Thank you. I was already conflating it. But going back to watch that one, just the ongoing experimentation with it, just trying to weaponize it. It's just it's kind of crazy. And then if you want to get into it further, everybody talks about once we did drop the bomb and once all the nuclear testing was happening, that's when the uptick of UFOs started happening across the country. Across the world in general, actually, but those have always been connected in some way, shape, or form.
Wait a minute, I've never heard that before. Really?
Oh, no, really?
Yeah, I've never heard that theory before.
Okay, this is only what I've been hearing from like podcasts and different articles that I've read online. They say, and it's believed, that once they dropped the bomb and all the nuclear testing that was happening, is that that's the possibility of when the UFOs started becoming more of an issue, where they were becoming more visible. And the thought is that now that we have learned this, large threat of using nuclear weapons, we've learned to essentially blow ourselves up. That's when another life form or another race might have said, "Oh shit! Like what's going on over here?" And that may have been what attracted UFOs. Because there's some correlation. Don't quote me exactly when it happened, but after the bomb was dropped, that more UFO sightings started taking place.
Wow. Huh. I'm going to have to look into that one. I've never heard that one before.
More recently, I heard that Joe Rogan, after he opened up his new comedy club in Texas,
yeah,
he refers to it as the Mothership because he's a big UFO fanatic himself. He likes to, go through and debunk things, but he always, he wants it to be real to a certain extent, but he realizes that a lot of the stuff out there is just fake videos or things that are made up. But the two rooms that he has in his comedy club, the Mothership, are named after the two bombs, so Fat Man and Little Boy.
Oh, interesting. I never knew that. I didn't even know he opened a comedy club.
Yeah, he essentially after the pandemic where things got kind of dicey on the West Coast, and they were trying to force everything to close, even though they were trying to do safeguards to try to make shows still happen, whether they were outdoors or having like a plexiglass shield in the way, whatever the case was. They were trying to do all these different methods to continue to have live comedy shows. He got sick and tired of it and said, this is kind of crazy. I've had enough. And then he moved to Texas during the pandemic. And then while he was down there, he says, look, I miss the Comedy Store. I would love to have that, but the West Coast has gotten too crazy for me, because he's never been really the type to seek out roles for acting. He's always wanted to do comedy. I mean, yeah, he's been on news radio. Yeah, he did Fear Factor, but it was not something he was looking to pursue. So when he had the chance,
he sure shit don't need the money.
That especially, because apparently Fear Factor gave him "fuck you" money. That's what he's always said, which allowed him to continue pursuing comedy. And his podcast is apparently, it wasn't even really like a real serious thing. He just got together with a bunch of friends and it just became a big hit. And now people are, for better or worse, either against him or, enjoying the show, whatever the case is. He has a weird mix when it comes to fans. But with all that, he moved to Texas, convinced a bunch of other comedians to move down there with him. So they have like this little community going on. And that's when he spent years finding a place and creating a new comedy club, not to replace the Comedy Store, because I believe it was the Comedy Store that Mitzi Shore had run for ages and ages until unfortunately she passed away. But he just wanted to have a place that was made for comedians, so that new comedians can come up, do reps, get in front of the microphone, do open mics, whatever the case is, but also have shows where people come down and they just destroy the house with having killers come out as far as doing comedy sets. Rogan is pretty much one of the reasons why Ron White changed his mind, and he was about to retire, but then decided, after doing a night at the Mothership, he was like, fuck this, we're gonna do this every night. This is amazing. We're gonna keep this going, and just reignited Ron White's love for comedy. And you can look online and on Instagram and everything else, they keep having comedians come down and killer sets and killer shows, and so far it's been doing really well. And his whole mentality is, he's not looking to make a profit, he's looking to break even. He wants to take care of the comedians, take care of the servers, take care of everybody who works for him, but he just wants to break even. If he does that, he's happy. I'm sure his accountant is probably having a heart attack every time he says that, but his main thing is like, look, I don't need the money, I've got the money. I'd rather just build a place for everybody else to work and have fun. If that's the mindset and mentality, why not? Sorry.
No, you broke up for a second there.
I had to peek over to the time to see what was going on. What was the last thing you heard?
I already forgot. Sorry, I'm having a hell of a time concentrating right now. Sorry, man.
No, it's cool, man. I'm currently sitting in a room that's probably like 85 to 90 degrees with no fan on, so I'm just trying to get through this as best I can.
I hear you. But no, I heard you talking about how like his accountant's probably having a heart attack.
Well, yeah, because just about every place you find when they open up, whether it's a club, a restaurant, whatever the case is, the main goal is making money. And that's one of the things that he's always said in the past. Joe Rogan's always been like, be nice to the comedy, to the club owner, be nice to the people that work there, because they're there for you. They're there so you can have a place to work. Whether the place is good or not, that's a different story. But, having the different venues is always beneficial to the comedians. So what he wants to do is just to have a place for the comedians to come down, have fun. The green room is set up a certain way for the comedians. The way to the stage is set up so you don't have to worry about walking through the crowds or anything like that. You don't have to mingle with the crowds if you don't want to. And what was the other part? He took the input of a bunch of different comedians as far as like, you know, how low should the ceiling be, how big should the stage be, what are the curtains on the behind the performer going to look like, because he wanted everything to be focused mainly on the comedy, down to the point where apparently he doesn't even serve food in the mothership because he thinks that's always a detracting element of the show. Somebody's up there telling a dick joke and somebody's just munching away on their like chicken tenders, and it just kind of removes them from the performance itself. They serve drinks, they serve, you know, cocktails, whatever the case is, but they just stay away from food, to the point where a lot of performers say, like, why don't you serve food? He goes, look, there's a pizza joint down the street. If you want food, you can order something up. Somebody will bring it to you. You don't have to, or just, you know, bring a snack or something beforehand so you can have it. But there's no food here. We go to other places after the fact. You know, we support the other businesses in the area. So it's cool. It's cool to hear that he's been able to build this little place. And I think it's only been a few months now, but they've been doing like gangbusters down there as far as the reactions of the crowds whenever they put up the different promotions. I kind of wish I had a chance to go down there, because we've talked about some of the comedy clubs in this area aren't the greatest.
Nope. Oh, they're crapola.
So it would be nice to go down where a place is built for the comedians. Like, you can go out there and see them, you know, be in a relaxed setting and doing what they want to do, rather than have to worry about people, you know, ordering food in the middle of the show, or, you know, getting a little unruly or whatever the case is. You just go out and enjoy a night of laughs. And if you enjoy the comedian, you know, all the more reason. When was the last time you were out for a comedy show?
The last time I went to a comedy show, 2014 maybe.
Really?
Yeah.
Was that the one we went to?
No, 2014 was I went to go see Camille Nanjiani and Jonah Ray down in Philly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I can't remember if that was before or after that one time we went to go see Foley do his thing at in New Brunswick. I honestly cannot remember what year that was.
That had to have been before, I want to say.
Okay.
So I think when we saw Foley was 2014, 2015. Trying to remember now. That's really a tough one. I have to look through my pictures. my phone is the keeper of dates now. Yeah, that one's a tough one. That might have been the earlier year. So it might have been 2014. So right around that time.
Yeah, so they were probably pretty close to each other, because I just can't remember any more of it anymore. But yeah, there's just not. I'm tough with comedy as well, so there's not a lot of shit I actually want to fucking go to. So
yeah, well,
a lot of those fuckers are unfunny as fuck to me.
Yeah, it's actually been quite interesting now, because a lot of these guys that want to try to get comedy specials, you know, Comedy Central used to be the go-to, but Comedy Central would hold on to your performance. So if you put a special out for them, they would essentially own it for whatever period of time. Netflix has become a more popular place to go, but Netflix isn't going to, you know, give everybody the $1 million deals. Not like, again, Rogan or Chappelle or some of the other people that put shows out. The most recent one that I saw was Tom Segura's Sledgehammer, which, if you're into his humor, it's a fun show. We watched it last night, and it had me laughing a few times. Bert Kreischer was another one that got big deals, and there's a number of other comedians that'll get Netflix specials, and they'll get paid big bucks to put it out there. And once again, they won't tell you how it's doing. They'll just say, "Oh, we love it. Great. How's it doing? Whoa, we love it." Once again, they'll keep the ratings, you know, under lock and key. But a number of different comedians are now going to YouTube to put up their special, because if they can monetize their channel, they'll just put it on there, and then they'll rake in the views.
Yeah, that makes sense, actually. That's a good idea.
I believe it was Ari Shaffir. We mentioned him. He had his most recent special called Jew. They weren't going to put it on Netflix, so he said, "Screw it, I'll put it on YouTube." And he garnered something like 4 million views, and it's gone well past that since last time I saw. That special, again, I don't know if Ari Shaffir is everybody's cup of tea, but, you know, the special was fun and funny. He's been doing really well. And then I've been seeing a number, again, when you go to the algorithm, you look up one comedy show on YouTube, and it's going to start giving you other ones. And I see these random people that I don't know who they are, but they have specials up now. And if you're so inclined and you have about an hour and 20 minutes, you can check out a brand new comedy special from an up and comer, or maybe somebody who's been around for quite some time. You never know.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see what happens.
Ah,
Did you do anything special for the 4th, or you just hang around and relax?
I did nothing.
You and I are the same boat. Look at that.
Well, you're on vacation, aren't you?
Yes, it's the thought came up of okay. Jen has D&D, Dungeons and Dragons. She found a group online that she plays with, and they normally play on Tuesday nights. And then she comes up to me and says, are we going to go anywhere for the 4th? Are we going to do anything? I'm like, I didn't plan on anything. And honestly, I don't want to get caught in traffic and crowds on the 4th, because let's face it, everybody's going to go to the shore. Everybody's going to want to check out the fireworks. Everybody's going to be on the boardwalk. Like, how about we do something after the 4th? Would it be hopefully a little bit quieter? Won't be as crazy, and we'll see what happens. She goes, okay, it's good. That means I can still game. I'm like, wait. So what if I told you that I wanted to go down to the shore on the 4th? Are you going to tell me we have to be back by a certain time so you can game? She goes, no, I would have made like changes or adjustments. I was like, okay, don't worry about it. We're going to stay home, do what you're going to do. I'll take care of the kids and everything else. But it was just that moment of like, do we want to get stuck in all the crowds and all the nonsense? Do we want to get, all the traffic on the highway? It just, maybe I'm getting older. It just doesn't seem to have the same allure for me anymore. And I was telling Jen that if you really want to check out a fireworks display, you go down to the shore. I'm sure they have one like every other day during the summer, just for the kicks of it. So at that point, was just like, yeah, let's just stay home, relax, do whatever. And it was pretty much a lazy day, thankfully. So we were just doing stuff around the house, nothing crazy. And then again, we're getting ready for martial arts class for the oldest, and that's pretty much been it. Just home and martial arts. So I really can't complain.
Not bad. Not bad. It could be a much worse day.
With us now starting off July, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, because June went by so quickly. At least in my respect. Are there any other movies that you're looking forward to that might be coming out soon, or you're just going to wait for them to come home?
I don't even know what else is coming out. Yeah, there's nothing else I even got on my radar. Is there another Marvel movie coming out this summer?
That's a good question, actually, because I know Secret Invasion was the next big thing. I know The Marvels, which is the sequel to Ms. Marvel, will be coming out, I want to say, in November, roundabout. Let's find out. And then past that, I think you've got Oppenheimer, which you already mentioned. And then, what was the other one? I think Mission Impossible is the next one after that. Sometime in, if not this month, maybe next. So, Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, because they're very adamant that it'll be having more parts later on. I don't know if they said it was like 2 or 3 parts. But this one says, coming soon, release July 12th. So, funny enough, the same day as the deadline for the Screen Actors Guild. So we'll see what happens with that one.
Yeah, that's coming up very soon.
And then, since you mentioned any other Marvel movies coming out. Last time we talked about the different actors that were cast for the upcoming Superman movie. Superman Legacy. Coming to find out, the one actor, Brosnahan, who will be playing Lois Lane, she was in the Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. She played the titular role.
Oh, okay.
And right now, in post-production, expected November 10th, 2023 is The Marvels.
Okay.
So we'll see what that all happens from there. But as far as before you came back onto the show, I did a rundown of different movies that are going to be coming out for the summer season. And it seems like they're all bunched right now in this month and last month. Spider-Verse, Guardians, I guess May, June, and July. Right on that window is when a lot of the big movies came out, and they're competing with one another. But aside from that, it just seems like everything's going to start like dwindling after July. So there aren't too many more left that are going to be big movies or big blockbusters. which is kind of a shame because it does feel like the box office, or at least the summer movie idea, has just been a pale of its former self, a shadow of its former self. Yeah, right. I don't know. I think the heat's finally getting to me.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Yeah.
But it's, it's a shadow of its former self in the respect that a lot of people used to go out. A lot of people would go out to the movies. Now I've been hearing mixed reviews, especially after 4th of July, where people are saying, oh, 4th of July isn't really a good time to go to the movies. A lot of people are just home, or they want to go to the beach, or they want to have cookouts. I'm like, no, it's the summertime. If you're off of school, or if you have vacation from work, that's a great time to go to the movies. But again, the way things have gone, and people have their routines changed up ever since the pandemic, it just seems kind of odd, and we're all still trying to find like the proper footing. I guess we can see how that goes, but it's a shame. A lot of these films are not getting as much as they used to. But again, I don't know. Take it as you will, I guess. Some people are moviegoers, some people aren't, and I don't know. I'm stuck in between in somewhere.
I think this is just another thing that the pandemic has just changed this model as well, too, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I can only imagine they keep trying to look down the line as far as other movies that might, pull them out of this downward trajectory as far as the theaters are going. And there aren't really many big movies that are going to be doing well for the remainder of the year. Mm-hmm. Like before, you would be able to say, oh yeah, all these movies are going to be hits coming this summer. Like this is going to be a summer of blockbusters. That's really not the case anymore. And they're even trying to say, oh, maybe we need another couple of years to recover from this, or maybe things have to change. Yeah, things have to change. We've talked about a lot of the things that have to change as far as everyday life, pay, politics, everything else. It just, unfortunately, everything's conspired to make things a lot harder from, your day-to-day routine, your work life, your recreational life, and then in this case, Hollywood. Not everybody has as much disposable income. And especially for me, if I were to take the family to the movies, that's 4 movie tickets. How much is a movie ticket nowadays?
I don't know, between $10 and $15.
See, the last time I went to the theaters over here in Manville, I think I paid like $17, $18.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing, I almost never go to IMAX or anything like that, or whatever the hell, IMAX 3D or IMAX 9 zillion millimeter or whatever the fuck they're up to now with all this shit. So, I mean, when Patty, she sent me a message about it, it's like, oh, which showing do you want to go to, and which version of IMAX do you want to see this in? And I was like, I literally don't know what any of these things mean, because there was 3 different versions of IMAX. I was like, I thought IMAX was just fucking IMAX. What the fuck do I know? What the fuck's happening? So, and I heard from somebody else that there's some theaters too that the chairs move depending on what's going on the screen now too.
Yes, that is the 4DX experience.
Jesus fucking Christ.
So if you wanted to, you can go watch. That's okay. So we were talking about before Civil War, or even Winter Soldier for Captain America. If you caught that in 4DX, what they do is they pre-program the chair in the theater to react to the film. So if there's burnt rubber smell that's going on in the movie, they have a little thing that recreates the smell in the theater, so you have a faint smell of it. It's like you feel like you're there. If there's a chase scene going on, the chair might move around a little bit. If there's a snowy scene, you might get little flakes of something that fall down. They do it just try to become more immersive, and also to justify the higher ticket price.
And the second half of that is what makes more sense to me.
So, we've gone a few times to dine in theaters, and I'm not a fan of dine-in theaters for a new release film. It's a little frustrating because there's so much going on that detracts from the movie itself.
Yeah.
If a movie is 2, maybe 3 weeks into its run and there's less people in the theater, then I can see going to check it out because there's not as many distractions. But at the same time, some of the prices for these dine-in theaters, it's come on, it's mac and cheese. Is it really that expensive?
Well, that's the con.
But yeah, if you can find a theater with reasonable prices, and you don't have to have IMAX, you don't have to have the 5.1 stereo sound, you don't have to have the 3D experience, whatever the case. You just need a movie screen, comfortable chairs, and a nice theater. And hopefully they're not going to drag you over, the ticket price. Because they say they don't make their money off of the ticket prices themselves. It's concessions. So you buy the soda, you buy the popcorn. Hopefully that's not overpriced, but support the theater however you can, and then hopefully from there you just become a frequent customer. But yeah, there's so many different ways now that they have so you can watch a movie, and it makes it kind of silly because I know here in Manville especially, they'll have the like 2 or 3 larger screens for the big release movies, and then they have the smaller satellite theaters off to the side, so you can watch. Again, after a few weeks into its run, you can watch something. I think I watched Tom Cruise's The Last Samurai like 5, maybe 6 weeks into its theater release. And
okay.
I was the only person in that theater. And by God, it was fucking glorious.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like finding $20 on the ground.
Yeah, oh yeah, it was great. It was well worth the price at that point. But yeah, no, the ticket prices nowadays have just gotten ridiculous and out of control. And I'm just curious, like, how far that's going to go before people are going to start saying, that's it. We can't afford ticket prices anymore. And they're going to have to respond in some shape or form. They had the one movie deal where you can buy, like, a subscription. And so long as you go to the theater twice a month, it, like, pays for itself. I can't remember which one that one was. Movie Pass or whatever it was.
Yeah, I've heard about that. I know a couple of people who bought it, I believe.
Yeah, so, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's about it, sir. I think we've done it.
Yeah.
I think we've survived.
Excellent. Fantastic. Yeah.
Any updates on the other shows that you're a part of?
No, I haven't been on them in 3-4 weeks.
Okay.
Oh, it's not easy for me to travel sometimes, so if they're running a different nights, then I'm just like, just record without me. And also that show Wings, it fucking sucks.
Wait. You're on a show called Wings on Wings, right?
Yeah.
And you're not a fan of Wings?
The show?
Yeah.
No, the fucking show's terrible. The fucking show could eat an ass. It's a perfect example of 90s comedy, and god damn, well, as we all know, comedy it ages very quickly, and it usually ages very poorly.
Yes. All right, so you just get together to eat wings with friends, hot sauce, and just tell dumb jokes.
And complain about what a piece of shit the fucking show is, and how if we ever meet any of the writers, we should totally fucking bully them and make them feel bad about themselves.
Where would somebody find past episodes of Wings on Wings?
You can find it on, it's, where the fuck is that fucking show? It's on the soon-to-be-named network.
Yes, okay.
It is on, you can find it wherever you find your podcasts are procured, such as, I keep trying to say Grindr, but that's not for podcasts. Bloody shit. I don't know. Just Google it. It'll come up, and I'm sure.
Gotcha.
Sure.
I kind of blindsided you with the question, so it is getting late in the evening at this point.
No, and I'm also forgetting like how, I don't know, Apple Podcasts, or what's the big streaming thing that everybody uses?
Spotify.
Thank you. I kept trying to say like Skeeter, or I just can't fucking.
You were probably
right
thinking of Stitcher, but that's going to be going away real soon, apparently.
What the fuck is Stitcher?
Stitcher was another podcast aggregate that was hosting shows for the longest time. How Did This Get Made had like their backlog was through Stitcher for the longest time, but it was behind a paywall. And I don't know why it's going away. I do know that Spotify bought Stitcher at one point, but I guess they're just going to do away with that model. I don't know what's happening specifically. So I don't know if that means everything that was on Stitcher just bleeds over now into Spotify, but that becomes a whole other discussion for another night.
Yeah, I have no idea. Like, honestly, if it's not on Spotify, I usually don't listen to it. I've been on a friend of mine does extra podcasts through Patreon. I don't think I've listened to a single one of them because I'm not going to sit there and download a fucking podcast and put it on my phone. That's just not happening.
Fair enough. Okay.
Yeah.
So Wings on Wings, you can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Just do a Google search, and that'll be brought up there, and you can join in on the fun with Doug and friends.
The word fun is used very loosely.
All right, sir. Well, once again, I appreciate you joining me. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. My name is Erik Hernandez.
I'm Doug.
And my tablet is talking to me once again. Shut up. Thank you for listening. Have a good night. We are the Rabblecast.